There is a rare kind of woman whose presence lingers in a man's heart without her uttering a single word. She does not chase, demand, or beg for attention. In fact, she often remains silent. Yet, her silence is not absence. It is influence. A man feels her more deeply than anyone else, as if she carries an invisible energy, a quiet force that speaks directly to his unconscious. Carl Jung believed that this type of woman is connected to something deeper. A psychic influence that does not come from appearance, charm, or performance, but from the center of her soul. She is not trying to prove herself, not competing for space, not adjusting her worth to the opinions of others. She arrives as she is. And when she enters a room, she does not need to announce anything. The shift is felt, not seen. The atmosphere changes, the energy bends, and those present sense her quiet magnetism without fully understanding why. Her silence does not create discomfort. It soothes. It gives space, like a breath of fresh air in a world of constant noise. Even those who have never encountered this presence before feel something stirring inside them. A pull they cannot explain. Perhaps you've experienced it. A man who was once distant, rational, even cold, suddenly cannot look away. He finds himself restless, unsettled, even obsessed. And you wonder, but I didn't do anything. Exactly. That is where the mystery lies. There is a power that makes no sound. A vibration that doesn't beg to be loved, but instead awakens something ancient in the male psyche. Jung described it as the symbolic effect of presence. It is not about what a woman does, but who she becomes when she is at peace with herself. This woman doesn't rely on strategies, tips, or rules. She does not dress her essence in performance. She simply is. And because she is unshaken by the need for approval, she becomes unforgettable. The male unconscious is not drawn only to beauty, gestures, or words. It is magnetized by what cannot be controlled, by mystery, by the unexplained calm she radiates. Her gaze is not demanding. It does not beg for validation. It does not invade, but it penetrates. And this unsettles many men who are used to women explaining themselves, adapting themselves, or shrinking themselves out of fear of being misunderstood. When he meets a woman who no longer fears misunderstanding, something inside him shifts. For a moment, his ego falls silent, and in that silence his unconscious begins to speak. But how did she reach this state? She learned that silence is not emptiness. It is depth. That restraint is not weakness. It is intensity. This is a woman who has been told, "You're too much." And instead of shrinking, she realized that too much was simply another's fear of her fullness. So she stopped fighting for love and began allowing herself to be felt. She chose silence not to hide, but to expand. And in doing so, she became unforgettable. That's where the shift begins. When a woman discovers that true power is not found in being constantly seen or endlessly explained, but in being felt. Not in loud declarations or grand displays, but in the quiet memory she leaves behind without reason. The woman who touches a man most deeply in silence is the one who has learned to live within her own stillness. She has faced storms within and refused to run. She has looked into the mirror and stayed to rebuild, stayed to heal, stayed to be reborn. And because of that, her presence carries a weight unlike any other, the sweet weight of a whole soul. When she stops molding herself to please, and instead begins to live from her truest essence, everything shifts. Even without words, even when she appears distant, her emotional field radiates like a magnetic pulse. And a man begins to feel the absence of something he never fully possessed. Her most authentic self. He may realize, perhaps after months or years, I never truly knew her. That recognition unsettles him because it awakens something in his unconscious. It is not logic that tells him this. It is his body, his intuition, his deepest instincts whispering about what was lost, unseen, or unappreciated. This kind of energy cannot be performed. It cannot be copied. It is born only from a slow return inward. A woman who has stopped shrinking to fit spaces that never honored her fullness. Instead of trading silence for approval, she reclaims silence as her own sacred power. And in that silence, she becomes presence. Not just an ordinary presence, but one so strong it can be felt even across distance. A presence that does not need to be loud to command attention. Perhaps you ask, how can I become that woman? The one who leaves traces even when she says nothing. The answer lies not in doing more, but in being more. It is not an act, not a performance, not a technique. It is a state of self-reconnection, a returning to what has always been within. The woman who is remembered in silence is the one who trusts her inner voice. She no longer fights to be heard, because she knows her vibration speaks before she opens her mouth. She knows that true love cannot be begged for, it is felt. That real respect cannot be demanded, it is reflected back naturally. This kind of authentic presence acts as an invisible beacon. She does not chase, she does not rush, she does not force. She allows life to unfold, trusting time and trusting herself. And this quiet confidence unsettles men who are used to games, seduction, or empty promises. Suddenly, their tactics no longer work. For she is not living to be chosen, she has already chosen herself. And when a woman truly chooses herself, everything changes. She becomes a safe place, not for everyone, but only for those ready to meet her at the same depth. She carries within her a truth that few can hold. She has learned to listen inward, while others are swept away by noise, distraction, and constant validation. That is why she stands apart. That is why her silence is unforgettable. She has connected with the tenderest corners of her inner being, parts no one else sees, the pieces that cannot be captured in a photo or reduced to a cliché. She made a choice. Instead of shouting to be noticed, she began whispering to herself. And in that silent dialogue, she discovered a voice that no longer depends on anyone else to survive. A voice that does not vanish when someone walks away, and does not tremble when others fall silent. For she has become her own companion, her own safe place. This inner self, sufficiency changes everything. A man can sense it instantly. He realizes he is not facing a woman who needs him to exist, but a woman who could choose him even though she does not need him. And that is what disarms him. It breaks the game. It turns the key. Carl Jung once said that real influence does not come from effort, but from integrity. And this woman embodies that truth. She is aligned with her emotions. She doesn't deny them, nor does she exaggerate them to capture attention. She allows herself to breathe, to pause, to move without the constant pressure of justification. She knows love does not require haste, and that anyone who truly wants to know her must be willing to dive deep, for she no longer lives at the surface. She is not swayed by the first flattering gesture, nor seduced by pretty words. Life has shown her enough to know that souls recognize each other not in performances, but in silence. The woman who drives a man to the edge of obsession without saying a word is the one who has already confronted her own pain. She is not afraid of solitude, nor does she beg for affection. She has found something far greater within herself than fleeting romance. She has found peace. And when peace is real, it radiates. Even the most rational, distant, or guarded man can feel it. He may not know how to name it, but he cannot escape it. Something inside him stirs as if an inner voice whispers, "With her, I cannot pretend. With her, I cannot lie." That is the silent power of the conscious woman. She doesn't shout, yet she leaves a lasting impression. And when she leaves, she takes with her something irreplaceable, the access she once gave him to her sanctuary of peace. No distraction, no substitute, no new face can replace what she embodied. What lingers is not what she said, but how he felt in her presence. And that is what remains when everything else goes quiet. If you are listening to this now, perhaps you are in your own phase of silence. Maybe you have stopped chasing, stopped insisting, stopped explaining, and you wonder if he notices. I assure you he does. He may not admit it. He may try to ignore it. But he feels it. For the silence of a woman who has reconnected with her worth is no ordinary void. It is a mirror. A reflection of what he lost, what he failed to value, what he may never find again. And yet, this woman does not wait for regret. She does not live for the return. She moves forward. Sometimes with pain, sometimes with longing, but always with her head held high and her heart steady. Because her self-love now outweighs any half-hearted attention. Her silence is not pride, it is awareness. And that awareness makes her unforgettable. It is not coldness that makes her withdraw, but affection. It is care for her own soul. She has decided she will no longer wound herself by trying to reach those without the depth to receive her. And so, even in silence, she leaves traces of presence, of truth, of a femininity that cannot be bought or faked. Do you see it now? This woman has no desire to appear irresistible. She simply respects her own time, and that quiet self-respect becomes the very source of her magnetism. What many call mysterious energy is often nothing more than a woman who loves herself enough to step back from places where she is not welcome. When she loves, she does not do so halfway. She gives her entire heart. But if her love is not met with reciprocity, she withdraws her energy with the same dignity with which she offered it. Without noise, without drama, without revenge. Only with serenity. And the man feels it. He feels it when she pulls away. He feels it when she stops waiting. He feels it when her silence takes the place of her presence. Because her silence is not punishment, it is sacred. And when the sacred departs, it leaves behind a void. Not an ordinary emptiness, but a hollow that echoes, that unsettles, that no other voice can fill. That absence lingers, and it is unforgettable. If you are listening now, perhaps a part of you feels awakened. A part of you recognizes this journey home to yourself. And I invite you from the heart to name this moment for yourself. Maybe it is return. Maybe awakening. Maybe peace. Whatever word resonates with your soul. And if these words touch you, know that you belong here. This space, Unseen Psyche, is not just a channel, it is a ritual of connection. A reminder that you are not walking this path alone. There is an invisible network of women awakening, healing, and reclaiming their power. Together, we are not just changing relationships. We are shifting the world. Because the woman who has learned the strength of silence is not hiding. She is protecting herself. And there is a vast difference between silence born of fear and silence born of maturity. Silence born of maturity is not weakness. It is medicine. It becomes reflection. It becomes healing. Instead of reacting to wounds, she retreats to listen to what remains inside. This is not coldness. It is emotional awareness. And awareness transforms everything. Carl Jung once said, "Every change begins with discomfort." An inner restlessness that whispers, "You no longer belong here." And this is precisely what many women feel before they transform. The unease before the silence. The quiet before the retreat. It is not a tactic. It is not pride. It is the body speaking, urging them to turn inward. And in that sacred silence, truth rises. She begins to notice the small betrayals. The yes that should have been no. The embrace that was never returned, the plans made alone, the promises accepted out of fear. She sees where she abandoned herself. And though this vision is not easy, it is liberation. For the moment she sees, she begins to return to herself. That is where her true presence is born. A presence beyond words. A presence that does not beg to be explained, because it is simply felt. She does not need to please. She does not need to prove. She simply exists fully, firmly, and authentically. And in that wholeness, she leaves traces that no one can erase. The woman who embodies this kind of presence no longer depends on words to explain what she feels. Her energy speaks louder than any explanation. She does not justify her absence, because the echo of her presence is enough to be felt. She does not ask to be remembered, because her silence ensures that she never fades from memory. And men notice it. Even the most rational ones. Even those who claim they are unaffected. The truth is, the subconscious always perceives when a woman changes, when she falls silent out of self-love, when she stops justifying, when she no longer reacts to old patterns. And in that exact moment, something inside them breaks. The power they once believed they had is gone, and they do not know how to face the loss. Many will try to return, not out of real transformation, but because her silence unsettles them. Because losing her feels like losing something precious, even if they cannot name what it is. And this is where the challenge lies. The woman who has embraced silence as self-love must remain vigilant. She cannot let her silence become a trap that pulls her back into recycled affections. She must keep it sacred, for that is the true test, to remain firm, even in the face of apologies without action, promises without change, or longing that leads nowhere. Her task now is greater. She must become the guardian of her own peace, not guarding it with walls that shut the world out, but protecting it like a garden that blooms for those who enter with truth, but closes its gates to those who come only out of habit. And this shift transforms how she loves. She now loves without erasing herself, without begging, without fear. The woman who drives him crazy in silence is the one who no longer ties her worth to his actions. She has already seen her worth, integrated it, and now shares it only when she chooses. And if she chooses not to, that too is enough, because she has learned that the deepest freedom comes when she no longer waits to be chosen. And in choosing herself, she broke an ancient cycle. The world told her to always give, to sacrifice, to prove her love. She believed it once, but not anymore. Now she walks in a new truth. Love that includes her, respects her, and listens even in silence. This way of living is revolutionary, and something powerful happens when she lives this way. She inspires. Other women begin to see that strength does not mean hardness, that kindness does not mean submission, that love does not mean abandoning oneself. Carl Jung believed that true feminine power is not in domination, but in healing. When a woman reconnects with her soul, she becomes a source of alignment, not just for herself, but for everyone around her. That is why when she enters a room, the atmosphere shifts, not by magic, but because her presence cleanses. Her calm breaks the chaos. Her truth realigns the space. She becomes a living symbol of what it means to be awake. And the most beautiful part, she no longer needs anyone to validate it. She no longer lives for appearances, but for something far deeper: self-respect, self-love, and emotional integrity. This kind of woman leaves traces, rare, subtle, eternal, and perhaps the greatest secret is this: when she learned to be silent, she also learned to love differently. She has discovered a purer, fuller, truer kind of love. A love not born from fear of loneliness, nor from the hunger for validation, but from freedom, presence, and choice. This kind of love is rare, radiant, and unsettling to those who have never encountered it. For she no longer allows herself to be guided by impulse or urgency. She listens first to her body, her intuition, her soul. And when her body whispers no, she honors it, even if her mind argues otherwise, even if others plead, even if the moment tempts her. Because she knows that any bond that disconnects her from herself is a bond not worth keeping. Her peace is no longer negotiable. She lives by a rhythm that the world struggles to understand. Where society demands haste, she cultivates patience. Where others strive endlessly to prove their value, she simply is. And that simple being, authentic and unshaken, makes her extraordinary. For it is easy to find people who want to be loved, but so rare to find someone who is so deeply rooted in her essence that she does not need to chase love. When such a woman appears, even in silence, she becomes a mirror a mirror to the lack of depth in others, a mirror to the urgency they carry, the void they cannot name. Her silence is never emptiness. It is an answer that quietly declares, I am no longer available for what does not see me. No words required. The body feels it, the soul echoes it, and those with sensitivity hear it clearly. Men will interpret it in different ways. Some will label her silence as indifference, others as arrogance. But those who are truly ready to grow will recognize something deeper, that her silence is an invitation, a threshold, a rare opportunity to meet someone who has already freed herself from illusions and now seeks only truth. She wants no games, no masks, no applause. She seeks presence. She seeks depth. She seeks a soul that won't flee when things get raw and real. Because she is done with loves that make her doubt herself. Now she seeks only the kind that makes her bloom. And once she realizes she can be fulfilled without needing the approval of others, she begins to live fully. And when a woman begins to truly live, she becomes a seed of transformation wherever she goes. She doesn't need to shout, doesn't need to explain. Her silence itself is a portal, a vast, unshakable space where only truth can enter. Few dare to step into it, because within that silence, there are no masks. Everything is seen, everything is felt. But for those who do, the experience is unforgettable. Because her silence is not absence, it is concentrated presence. It carries her stories, her scars, her laughter, her rebirths. It is the vibration of her entire universe condensed into stillness. In her silence, the soul dances, the gaze speaks, and the air changes. A sensitive man may not explain it, but he feels it. What transformed her most is this: she no longer convinces, she no longer chases, she invites. She welcomes those who come with truth, who stay with intention, who linger with presence. And if they do not, she does not beg. She creates space, for herself, for the new, for what resonates with her soul. And that is where men feel the difference. For she demands nothing, yet accepts nothing less than truth. Not out of coldness, but out of love, love for her own heart, her own silence, her own sacred path. When she steps back, it is not to wound, but to preserve. Her withdrawal is not punishment, but protection. For she has learned that love is not meant to break her, but to expand her. And when she distances herself, she leaves something behind. An echo, a vibration, a memory that lingers long after her physical presence has gone. Those who truly felt her will never forget, because her essence does not vanish. It takes root. Deep roots planted not in superficial gestures, but in the invisible soil of truth, presence, and wholeness. The silence of this woman has become her kingdom. Within it, she hears herself more clearly. Within it, she discerns what truly matters. She no longer spends her energy trying to fix what was never hers to heal. She no longer seeks to convince anyone of her worth, because she knows exactly what she carries inside. And this certainty is rare in a world that constantly tells women they must prove themselves. Prove they are gentle enough, strong enough, beautiful enough, smart enough, lovable enough. She has left that game behind. She knows that the more she strives to prove, the more she risks losing herself. Now she moves differently, lightly, freely. She does not compete, she simply is. And this quiet, steady being is precisely what makes her unforgettable. For she did not beg, did not plead, did not force herself to be seen. She simply existed with presence so strong that it became an impression impossible to erase. Carl Jung once said, "The unconscious manifests in our lives as fate." When a woman awakens, she no longer surrenders to being the destiny of someone else. She begins to choose her own. She no longer repeats inherited patterns. She no longer accepts half measures in love. She recognizes when others are unready and does not waste herself trying to awaken them. She does not want to rescue or be rescued. She simply walks beside those who also walk. She no longer runs ahead, no longer carries others on her back. She does not ask anyone to come with her. because she has discovered the completeness of her own company. This emotional independence is not about dominance, but about presence. She becomes a woman who speaks without words, who shifts the atmosphere without sound, who attracts without effort. Her energy speaks the language of truth. Those who are aligned with it come closer, those who are not drift away. No struggle, no resistance, just awareness that not every connection is meant to endure. Not every story is written to last. Some people arrive only to teach her how to love herself more deeply. She does not suppress her feelings. She allows the tears, the longing, the ache. But she no longer drowns in them. No longer abandons herself to save others. Instead, she looks her pain in the eye and asks, "What have you come to teach me?" And within that question, she finds her strength, her light, her center again. Every time she returns from the depths, she rises fuller, steadier, more herself than before. And this is why he does not forget her. Not because of her body, not because of her beauty, but because of the rare soul she revealed. He may search in other faces, other arms, other voices, but something will always be missing. For what made her unforgettable was not her form, but her essence. The safety she carried, the space she created, the way she made the unseen feel eternal, the gaze that said, "Even without words I see you." And when a woman sees a man like that, he will never again be seen in quite the same way. Even if he denies it, even if he runs from it, somewhere deep in his subconscious remains a code, one that only she has unlocked. Yet this woman does not cling to that power. She knows her worth is not in being unforgettable, but in being authentic. If her presence lingers in his memory, so be it. If it fades, that is fine too. Her life is no longer built on the gaze of others, but on the truth of her own essence. The freedom she has embraced came at a cost. Not everyone can stand the light she now carries. Not everyone stays. Yet she refuses to trade her light for company. She has learned the art of being alone without being lonely. For men who are used to controlling the rhythm of attachment, this is unsettling. They realize they cannot bend what does not depend on them, nor can they replace what is truly rare. What she once gave freely, she now chooses with care. What she once begged for, she now observes in silence. What she once tolerated, she now walks away from. But her silence is not indifference. It is sacred self-care. It is peace, it is love of the purest kind directed inward first. She does not lecture, she does not fight to be understood. She simply is. Whoever wishes to feel her energy will. Whoever does not is free to pass by. That is how she lives now, with grounded feet, a free heart and an open soul, not open to everyone, but open to the truth. And when someone approaches her with honesty, she knows, because she trusts her intuition above all. This trust is her liberation. The woman who drives him mad without saying a word has no rehearsed formulas, only truths. That is why, even as life moves forward and names fade, she remains unforgettable. Not out of effort, but because her energy does not dissolve. Her love, when she offers it, carries something timeless. The subconscious remembers, even when the mind forgets. And if this silence is yours too, if you carry unspoken stories, if you have loved quietly, if you have walked away without noise, then this space is for you. Here, every silence is honored. Here, the soul speaks. For when a woman chooses silence with awareness, she alters everything. And once she has found herself, she will never again settle for being only half.